everyone. Great to see you all here on the second day. My name is Lian. I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that I've done in the last year. And the way that I'm going to do this is I'm going to tell a story about an organization. And maybe this is a story that you will also find familiar because it all starts with someone going to a conference and coming home and then having this brilliant idea about how to meet the needs of their users better, building a platform. That's something that I think a lot of us have experienced recently, probably. And when I sent this abstract to KubeCon originally, I was certain that by the time I would give this talk, I would have the solution to all our problems. Like I asked a question in the abstract, like how can we better consolidate all the interests that different groups have, or like requirements on a platform. And I was sure that by the time I have to give the talk, I would have the solution. Unfortunately, they did fire me before I was able to find the solution. So if you came here to get the secret sauce that is proven to work and will definitely also work for you, you're unfortunately not going to get it, and otherwise I'd be rich now. But I can share, someone's already leaving. Bye. I can, however, share with you what worked, what didn't work, and what I would have done differently. So just it's not going to be a technical talk, but I will tell a little bit about the tech stack, just so you get an idea of what kind of organization this was. So we were working with OpenShift, 4.16 and 4.17 in parallel, because what happened was there was an existing platform, but at the same time we were moving to a new one. So by the time when I joined, the new platform was already in development for 2 years, but nothing had been delivered until then, or by that time. So one of the reasons why they hired me was they were saying like, hey, we have this platform, it's not getting delivered though, and also no one wants it, because no one ever talked to a user, which, never mind. But yeah, so the topology of it was that we had 4 clusters. We had 2 clusters for dev and 2 for prod. This was on the new platform. On the old platform, there were 2 dev clusters, but they were the development clusters for the platform team. There were 2 production clusters that had all the dev environments and production environments of the the user workloads, which obviously could lead to problems. So that was also one of the reasons why we had to move. The other reason was that 4.16 was end of life already for the old platform, so there was like, we had to move. Yeah, and then we also built a management cluster to kind of provision all the other clusters and do all kinds of like security, Red Hat advanced security stuff. Listen, I left before I had to look at that. And then finally, the way that we were delivering applications to the platform, we did via Azure DevOps. And if you've spent some time with me the last couple of days, I did tell you about my opinions about this. But this is a whole different talk, so we don't have time for that. However, I will mention a couple of times around just so you have an understanding that this is as the government, there's a very enterprisey component to this because we were using Azure DevOps server, not even the cloud offering like the shitty one. So anyhow, just before we get started, let me just tell you really quickly about myself. My name is Lian. You can go on my shiny new website or find me on the internet everywhere at Lian Makes Things. I call myself a cloud-native human. I do believe that we're more than just our role. There's more to us and that we can give. For the recruiters in here, I am a platform engineer, freelancing right now. Well, this is old now because the CNCF killed all their old tags. They created some new tags, so the app delivery tag does not exist anymore, actually. But when it did, I was a co-chair there. I'm also the chief karaoke officer, and I'm very sorry if you wanted to go to karaoke last night because I was too tired. But we could try again tonight if you want, for those who are still staying. Oh no. Well, there was a funny video here. Oh, it's here. Oh. Does anyone work in IT here? Because I feel like I'm having like an issue with the. Okay, never mind then. Thank you, thank you.
Someone does work in IT.
Yeah, well, just one single lady in the back. Anyhow, well, when I was not working in IT, I was also doing some acting, stand-up comedy, and musical theater, which was really nice because it gave me the opportunity to look outside, what we are doing, and just like look at stuff that's actually really fun and doesn't make any money. As a as a consequence of that, I have now pivoted to. I'm just telling people what to do. So I'm doing public speaking workshops. If you do, want to maybe give your own talk, because obviously it doesn't take much, please talk to me, or there is a form here where you can express your interest, and once I reach critical mass, I will do some online public speaking workshops again. But back to our original scheduled programming. So I was working for this organization called the Ivo Rechtspraak. I do live in the Netherlands, which is why my Dutch is so great. And the Ivo is basically the IT department of the Dutch judiciary, so the Rechtspraak. And yeah, as I said, the IT service provider. So mostly they were building mostly web services for judges and lawyers and the public. So anytime you needed something from the judiciary, you would use one of their services. The way that they worked was they had value teams, which basically are the teams that would build the actual end products. Those were cross-functional teams, so they had developers, testers, and what they called SREs, which is just classic ops, because there was no reliability at all. And most of the applications, as far as I could see, were Java and .NET. Kind of not surprising, really, for like an enterprise organization like that. Now, the value teams, or all the teams were organized in what's called a base. And I'm sure this is some kind of scrummy, I don't know, organizational stuff. I don't know. But they were organized in bases. We had like 4 to 10 teams per base. We were in the platform space, which is basically the infrastructure base. That's fun to say. We had 4 different platforms, I think. There was Azure. There was some stuff that someone built in the garage, and then the OpenShift platform that we built. And so we were called the Container Management Platform, or later Modulaire Rechtspraak Platform. Yes. And there was also a team that was called Ontwikkelaar Support Team, which is a developer tooling team. So we were all organized in one base, kind of like functioning as one big group, but separate teams. So yeah, we were the platform's base, and this is a question for everyone, kind of like, why would we want to have platforms?
It's new and trendy.
It's new and trendy, it makes a lot of money. If you're not into AI, what else would you be doing? Yes, that's the right answer. But to me, I'm thinking about it this way. So if you're looking at, like, I'm going to take as an example the act of delivering applications to your production environment. So this is when I started, we would have scripts. So everyone would have a script, probably Bash, on their local machine that you copied from someone else when you were onboarded, when you joined a new company. They would give you their script, and then you had to change things because obviously you had a slightly different OS than they did. So everything had to be slightly adjusted, and when you give it to your new colleague, they also had to then adjust it slightly. This is how it used to work. Then one day someone was like, okay, maybe why don't we extract those scripts and just build like tiny services, right? And then you could just like call the service, and we don't have to store these scripts on our local machine that are always slightly different. Now, this is a good thing, but also kind of not a great thing. Because the one thing about the services now, that they are loosely coupled. So as an example again, if a user requests a service to build and return a container image. So I want to deploy my application. I have like a build service that's connected to my code repository, and I will call it in some way and then receive an image. Then the next step for me would be to go to the deployment service that is somehow coupled to my production environment, and I would pass in my image or a reference to my image to this deploy service. So as I said, these services are loosely coupled, so you're now possibly running into any issues. For one thing, these services, they could be APIs, they often aren't, and they could be configurable, but they often aren't. So now you have the issue of, well, you don't actually know if the image that you're getting out of here is actually working for this service over there. Why is that? Well, one of the things that I've seen in the long time that I've been in IT is that the people providing these services will only eat their own dog food, meaning that if you have any kind of standards, they will diverge over time because you're only testing your own service against your own service instead of testing the whole flow. So the idea of platforms really is, among other things, also that you will look at everything from the viewpoint of the entire platform. Like a platform doesn't just solve one tiny problem, a platform solves the entire application lifecycle problem. So what I mean by that is just that platforms optimize for the golden path. So in the context of a platform, we are looking at users and their flow first. So taking the same example, if a user wants to deploy something on a platform, they would request a deployment with the deploy service living in the platform. And then, and this is obviously just one way that you can implement it. I'm not saying everyone has to do it like that. The deploy service will trigger the internal build service that is connected to the code repository, get the image, and then that build image will be passed through to deployment. Now, this image could have already existed there. It could have been built when the latest version of the code was updated, like last week, for example. The whole idea is that you're pulling stuff to your production environment instead of like pushing it. But again, this is just one way to implement it. The whole idea, again, is just that you're looking at this process and your technology and your flow from the user's perspective instead of your own service. Just a quick sidestep into developer portals, because sometimes people use platforms and portals kind of interchangeably. Now, the way that I understand this is that a portal is a UI, or sometimes also like a GUI, which exists on top of an existing platform. And the idea is that it will surface like common workflows to provide the easy usage of the platform services and features. So basically, a platform can do kind of everything, but a portal will funnel you through the best practices and most common use cases. One of the things that I noticed was a big issue is that we think of the platform as kind of like a Lego set, right? Where we think of it as building blocks where users will be able to inner source things like, let's say, a door or a room to be used for other users. But our users, and maybe you also kind of like have a similar experience if you're a platform engineer, they kind of expect a full house that they can already move in. And then they don't agree on the house. So some people will want like a really fancy modern house with like cool features like AI, and others want something that's more conventional but excellent in every way, right? So the issue that basically, to summarize, is that we were not defining the vision and the scope clearly enough. And because the scope is not clear, it does invite users, team members, stakeholders to just dream up all kinds of scenarios that they kind of like want, and then they're disappointed or confused when they don't exist. One example of this was image registry. And again, if you've been with me the last 2 days, we've been talking about Artifactory a lot. I'm going to tell you now why I don't hate Artifactory, but anyhow. So in the old platform, what we did was that we were using the internal OpenShift build, config, and registry, but because we had two clusters that were basically redundant. Every time you want to deploy something, you had to rebuild it on the other cluster. So you always had to build twice. I don't know. Someone's looking at me like, what's going on? Yes, that was not great. And so for the new platform, we wanted to go to an external registry. Now, if you've ever done anything with OpenShift, you know that OpenShift already gives you key. There's also Harbor, for example. But this business, and I'm going to say the business a couple of times, because if you work in an organization that this size, if you just want to do something and not give a reason, you just say the business decided on it, right? Like you just always go like, oh, the business. So the business decided that every single artifact that's built anywhere in this organization needs to go into the exact same repository. So hence, because there was a lot of Java developers, they decided we need to go with Artifactory, but it also needs to be highly available, which then turned out that the Artifactory license cost as much as the entire platform. Yeah, so at some point also later, we found out, someone told someone at some point, but not us, that the build process itself was also going to be moved out of OpenShift and be handled by Azure DevOps server. Again, not the best, well, it's the business, right? So for us, this was pretty great because we had less features to maintain, but this was also not great because I feel like storing images feels like a central service for a platform, like for a container management platform. So we also always had a lot of back and forth. If we wanted to iterate on the service, just like kind of make the onboarding process smoothly with the OST, the developer tooling team, which it just cost us a lot of time. If we had just used something that we had our own kind of like management power over, this would have been much easier. For users, this was super confusing because, again, like image registry feels kind of like a central platform service, but then they couldn't register with us. They had to go to a different team for that. And for the stakeholders, again, turned out cost as much as the entire platform. So a year after we first built our POC with Key, and the business decided to go with Artifactory, they decided to go back to Key because someone realized we already paid for this. Yeah. Never mind. So when I gave this talk at KubeCon, I just constantly went on side rants, and then I ran out of time, and multiple people were like, this talk sounds like this speaker just needed some therapy. So this is why I'm standing here and like, never mind, let's just move on. So the reason why everything was so confusing was because we were still very much working from kind of this service-based approach. We were providing individual services, like building and storing images, and then we told them this was a platform, but the way that they experienced was very much like, for this thing, we need to go to this team, for this thing, we need to go to this team, and then we have to figure out how we put this together. But really, in a platform environment, developers are not clients like they are with services, but they are contributors. Like they also own the platform and how it works. As I said, like they should be the ones building or helping to build tiny services, improvements with the building blocks that we provide for them. Because if you look back at the evolution, the scripts actually originated with developers, right? They used to live on their machines because they know what they need and how they need it. Yeah, so just as a side excursus thought again, I'm sure you heard about the adage that if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, and if you teach a man how to fish, you will feed him for life. And I think this is what we often do wrong with platform enablement, is that we just give people fish, and we just never teach them, like, how do you actually, or we tell them, why don't you just look at this documentation, and then you'll know how to fish, which it's just like swimming. Like, you can't just learn something necessarily just from reading it. You have to actually do it, and do it in production. Yeah, so you might have heard people say that DevOps is an anti-pattern, which just means that it's a solution to a problem that made the problem worse. And to illustrate why, because like it's not quite clear to everyone, here's an explanation. So maybe you remember in the olden days when there was something we called the wall of confusion, right? So developers and ops people were very separate. Developers kind of didn't understand how their application was actually run. So there was kind of this hard border, and a lot of devs just kind of like threw everything over the wall, and then just kind of let infra deal with things. Well, we've come a long time since then, because now we replaced it with the canyon of confusion, which, yeah, there's nothing really blocking you from like running your stuff in production yourself, except that you don't know what the fuck you're doing. Sorry for that. And you have to cross the canyon with no net, right? So what do? We're like, okay, that's just easy. We just replace the canyon with some enabling teams. But now this is exactly what I mean with like we're giving them fish. We have now put a team there. So at Rechtsprag, some teams wanted to use MongoDB, up to the point where one team just decided to run like a 80 gig instance of MongoDB on the platform. That was obviously because we didn't have any limits anyhow, the site went. So the business just hired like a MongoDB team, like the team of 3 people who were experts in MongoDB who had never touched Kubernetes before. It's great. So great because now we had like an entire extra team that we also had to help and support instead of, again, not being able to focus on our actually core business, which was to provide the infrastructure. Oh, side note, we were also maintaining the hardware under the OpenShift platform. So now we had to also help a team to do Kubernetes 101 that was supposed to just run MongoDB instead of saying, well, we could use like a managed solution maybe. So what I'm saying is that actually an enabling team should be looking like this. Enabling teams should emerge from the value teams themselves. It should be a cross-cut through value teams and the platform team, instead of being separate from them. Again, it's about like find one person for each team that is interested in using a specific service, bring them together into like a community of practice or a guild or whatever, and that's how it should be done. So how can we get users, service providers, managers to align on what the platform should be and look like through building a community around the platform? We should be encouraging users to build the tooling of their dreams and take responsibility to help fix things so that we, the platform teams, can focus on providing the infrastructure for the platform and the building blocks that then can be used to build these like tiny little perfect house features. So what are the cornerstones of a good community? And I've been doing community building for a long time. I've organized a lot of conferences, built the karaoke community, the Kuberoka community. And these are the 4 main cornerstones that I've kind of like noticed kind of are the not the guaranteed like goals to success, but yeah, they help. So for one thing, consistency. You always do it at the same time with the same structure and the same faces. It should be safe to ask questions, and if you have spicy discussions, they don't leave the meeting. We call it the Las Vegas rule. You probably heard of it maybe in a retro or something. Unless you want it to. Unless you want this to be taken out of it, it will always stay within the meeting or the conversation or the community. If you did something great, you'll be praised. And if you have a grievance to air, you're also being heard. And if there are any action items or follow-ups that need to be done, they will be taken care of. Discussions don't just go nowhere, which is something that happens quite a lot in these kinds of community meetings. So I have like about 6 minutes. So I'm just going to give you like 2 quick examples of user groups that we tried to apply this principle to, that one worked not that greatly and one worked kind of better. So we had a meeting that was called the SRE meeting. So as I said, the teams were already, they had like SREs in them. And from every team was invited to bring an SRE to these SRE meetings. So by the time I joined, it was basically on live support. There was like, nothing was happening. The meeting would be canceled 1 minute before it starts because there was nothing to discuss. And well, not really, right? It was definitely stuff to discuss, but they were like, let's just not discuss it. And after I joined, I was like, okay, I'm going to take this over. I'm going to create an agenda, and I'm going to create a space for users to share and discuss, and just kind of like, hey, this is what I've done with the platform. But unfortunately, only very few were really engaged, like 2 or 3 out of like 15 people were just like the only ones who had anything to say. And they were just kind of like expecting for services to exist, to suit their needs, that didn't want to build anything themselves. Every time someone had an idea, I was like, that sounds great. Why don't you build like a POC and we'll help you? And then nothing happened. It really felt like a tribunal where the platform team just always needed to justify and defend themselves rather than like a shared user group with a shared responsibility. So it was really like we had this meeting in the office and only the platform team was in the meeting room, and we were like in front of this wall of people who called in, who were also in the office, but they just didn't want to come to the meeting room. So eventually, we closed the SRE meeting in favor for public sprint review and encouraged the SRE to just create their own community of practice. Because I think one of the issues we had was just that people were coming there because they thought, well, we have this product and we're just sitting there, or for one thing, probably just wanted to sit in a meeting. But also, it wasn't active to them. It was just passive consuming things, right? Well, on the other hand, there was a group that was the Microservice Guild, and there was also a meeting that was very unloved in the beginning. Kind of similar reasons, because the platform team felt like we were just getting blamed for stuff. But this was also changed, and we were inviting people specifically to contribute. So we would hear about someone building something cool, and then just send them an email like, hey, can you please come to our meeting and show this? Which was great, because this became much more active because we specifically picked an individual person to say, this that you did was great, so given the acknowledgement, will you please share? It was always pre-planned, we always had an agenda, and because of that, the focus shifted much more to solutions. So we were talking about, hey, you presented the solution, we think it's great, maybe we can improve this. Oh yeah, I have a great idea, let me like do this, add something to it, and yeah, that worked out much better. So in summary, platforms are a collaborative effort, right? It's not just one group providing something, everyone else consuming, but everyone's responsible for the platform. Scope cannot be communicated early and often enough. Just drive it down until your head explodes. Like, everyone needs to know at all times where the platform is going, otherwise they will just imagine stuff and then blame you for not building the stuff that they imagined in their head. Yeah, build community. I think this is not just for platforms, just for everything. Like, it really helps to get a village to help you with the things that you want to achieve rather than trying to do everything by yourself. And this is something that I really had to learn and still have to learn. It's just like something you just need to let things go. Like the SRE meeting was my first project that I tried to really like push, and it just didn't go anywhere. And I tried really like anything that I could. I even like brought in beer. Come on. But it just didn't go where I wanted it to go. So you just need to let it go. So I think this is the most important learning, actually. You need to just let go of your babies sometimes if it's not going anywhere. And this is it. I am so on time. Thank you so much for listening. These are the slides if you are interested in checking them back. And yeah, that's it. If you want to talk to me, I'm here all day. Maybe I'm kind of tired, but like I'm going to be here for a while. So thanks.